It's Mock Draft Monday, which means it's time for another mock draft. This draft order is set via the current NFL records. Things will change, and that's why we're going to do more mock drafts on more Mondays. So the draft order will change quite a bit week to week. And also, I'll be talking at the end about some of the players I decided to omit from this list. There are a bunch of really good players, a bunch of guys in the conversation for round one. This is just what I think, the guys right now who seem like they have the best chance to get into round one, and then taking some liberties as well. So there are some really good players that I haven't included for one reason or another. I know people were really getting on me for not including Clark Phillips in my last one. I'm still not including him in this one. I'll talk more about that maybe at the end, but let's get into it. Here we go. In this iteration, the Lions are up at number one. I have them taking Bryce Young, quarterback out of Alabama. Bryce Young is really, really good. And I talked about this a little bit in my Christian McCaffrey video, I believe, right? Where he just has that it factor. And I hate to say that, but there is a certain value, especially at the quarterback position, for being able to make the play when you have to make the play. That's Bryce Young in a nutshell. And I think that could potentially elevate him into that number one spot. We've seen smaller quarterbacks go high in the draft. Kyler Murray, most recently. Russell Wilson before now has seen a lot of success in the NFL. And Bryce Young could be quite successful as well. He plays really, really well in structure, which is something that Russell Wilson either cannot or does not do. And for a shorter quarterback, Bryce Young really plays like a taller quarterback, still quite mobile. Number two, have the Texans going CJ Stroud. I've had the Texans very up and down on whether to take a quarterback or not. They're going to have two top 10 picks probably. And if you do have a pick at number two overall, I think it would probably be wise to invest in the quarterback position. I'm not convinced that they will. Davis Mills, to me, is just good enough to kind of have another year, see what you have. But if they're picking top two, they might just say, hey, why would we bother waiting and seeing? We got CJ Stroud here at number two. Wouldn't be a bad idea. At number three quarterbacks in a row have the Panthers going Will Levis. This is just sometimes how it goes. I think it was a complete rarity. We used to be doing mock drafts where, okay, how are you having so many quarterbacks go in the draft? Well, it's such an important position. It's the most valuable position. And there's a reason that we're seeing more and more quarterbacks go, because teams are willing to take chances and swing and try to get a hit on some of these QBs, because if you hit, they're a difference maker. At the end of the day, coaching and development will always supersede talent at that position, in my opinion. So whether a quarterback goes to the Panthers, we don't know what their coaching situation is going to be like with Matt Rule being fired, or, you know, a really great established offense like the Chiefs. Obviously, they have their quarterback, but you get what I'm saying. It could be the difference between a QB flaming out or becoming a superstar. And the Panthers, I think they're going to be willing to take a chance. Will Levis has some big upside, big arm. Little bit old, right, for a draft prospect, but the traits are there otherwise. And then that leaves the Eagles at number four to take Will Anderson Jr. Of course, there have been a lot of trades. This is not the Eagles' actual draft pick. This is via a trade with the Saints, who just have not been very good, and they get their chance to take maybe the best player in the entire draft. Really, really talented, big pass rush upside. He's maybe slightly undersized if you had to find anything, but he's not really. He's like 6'4", 250-ish, maybe 243, plays like 240 though, and that's just a little bit light, but the player is still phenomenal, and he's going to be a top 5 pick, I think, no matter what. But, I mean, we've seen things change over the draft season a lot. Like, Kayvon Thibodeau slid to number 5. It seemed like he was locked for number 1 or number 2 overall. Evan Neal, kind of the same deal. He slid to number 7. We thought he was going to be a lock to go in the top 2 or 3. So things change, but Will Anderson here is actually the furthest down I've ever had him at number 4. Texans back up again here at number 5. I have them taking edge rusher Myles Murphy from Clemson. Myles Murphy, very, very talented player, and he has the flexibility to be kind of an inside-outside, moving around the defensive line type guy. I'm not going to compare him directly to Charles Omenihu, but for Texans fans, I would say think about the same type of build at least, and that should give him the flexibility to play both on the edge and maybe on certain pass rush downs inside as a more traditional defensive tackle. So Myles Murphy, really good. The Texans really need edge rush, and Myles Murphy should satisfy that. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick. And then another Clemson guy back-to-back, probably the highest I've had, Brian Brazigo. I looked at this quite a bit. I was really looking to get them help on the defensive line. Their defense could use quite a bit of help. Decided not to go cornerback. And we're going with someone that I think is a better fit for the Seattle defense as it stands. I thought about Jalen Carter, who's a great player. I think he's more of a defensive tackle, more of like a true 3-tech, where I think Bryan Bresee can be a 3 to a 5. And I think that makes a little bit more sense for the Seattle defense as it stands. Both very good players. But Bryan Bresee was my call here. Seattle needs help on the defensive line, long and short. Bryan Bresee goes to Seattle here, and I think would help them out significantly. Number 7, have the Steelers going Olu Fashanu, tackle from Penn State. He's played so well this year. I know that I'm, one of the only guys that have him getting drafted so high, but I think he's going to end up being a top 10 or top 20 pick at the latest if he declares for the draft. Still quite young, but he's just played at such a high level for Penn State that I think his draft status is only going to continue to climb. His draft stock can go through the roof, and I think he will end up being a really high pick. You have the combination of age plus talent plus level of play. He kind of checks all the boxes. There are a bunch of good, young, high upside tackles in this class, though, so it's going to be really interesting to see the order that they end up going. I have Peter Skoronski up next to the Jaguars. I think the Jags could just use an upgrade across that offensive line. I think Skoronski has potential to play right tackle for this Jags team, or potentially slide inside and play guard, but I think ideally he's your upgrade over Jawan Taylor. The Jaguars could use a bunch of different things. They've played fairly well, but I think the biggest thing for me is that the Jaguars need to score more points, and help up front is the way to do that. And we see a bit of a run on offensive linemen. 4 in a row now. We'll start with the Raiders at number 9. And I have them going Paris Johnson Jr. The offensive line for the Raiders could certainly be upgraded, and Paris Johnson Jr. gives you a little bit of flexibility. He's someone that has experience playing really multiple spots on the offensive line and doing so at a fairly high level. And for the Raiders, I feel like that's just a good fit. You kind of have swung and missed on tackles in the past, but Paris Johnson Jr. can go in at right tackle and I think solidify what could be a talented young core going forward. You have Colton Miller, who's good at left tackle, get another bookend, get someone that can really, really play, and that's Paris Johnson Jr. At 10, I have the Bears going Jalen Duncan. Again, kind of same idea here. You need to improve the offensive line. Justin Fields has been up and down. We've seen him play very, very poorly at times, but I also think that the help has not been there. They really need to invest in a talented receiver at some point, whether that's through free agency or the draft. I like Darnell Mooney a lot. I think you could use another one. However, you need help up front. And in order to throw to those receivers, you need time to do that. They also have an identity that really is surrounded with running the football. You have Khalil Herbert, who's quite good. You have David Montgomery, who's quite good. They love to run the ball. Get more help up front. Enable you to do so. Jalen Duncan of the Bears. At number 11, I have the Falcons staying in state and going with interior defensive lineman Jalen Carter from Georgia. This is your typical 3 technique. We talked about him earlier with the Seahawks. Really, really good player. I think worthy of a top 10 pick as far as defensive linemen go. Just with the draft order, to me, it made more sense for other teams to go in other directions. But Jalen Carter is maybe a top 5 player in this entire class. He's just that talented, and for the Falcons that need help on the defensive line badly, Jalen Carter would solidify that group, or at least satisfy that need, I should say. Really, really good. Furthest down the board that I've had him go as well, but the talent is definitely there, and it would be, great value at 11. I think it's easy to get caught up with, a ton of pre-draft and preseason projections. And Jordan Davis, Heisman guy, he's a locked top 5 pick, and then he falls to number 12. Same type of thing happens here. Jalen Carter ends up going at number 11, but they're not the same player, so that's maybe not a great comparison. Jordan Davis fell down the board because he's more of a true nose with pass rush upside, and I'm really saying that as someone that maybe could be a decent pass rusher. Jalen Carter is a legit pass rusher on the defensive line, so those are just going to be more valuable, so he could definitely go higher than this. And then at 12, another player that I have falling, further than I have before. It's Kelee Ringo from Georgia. Really talented corner. Checks all the boxes on height, weight, speed, and then tape. Really good. Probably will end up going higher than this. But the Dolphins need help at cornerback. Kelee Ringo, very, very good. At number 13, I have the Arizona Cardinals going with Tyree Wilson, an edge rusher out of Texas Tech. He was somebody I was pretty high on coming into the year because of his size, strength, and length profile. You talk about the arm length that's so important for defensive linemen. It really helps you win pass rush battles against offensive linemen, helps you out in run defense as well. Making first contact as a defensive lineman is very, very important, and it's the same reason we saw Trayvon Walker go so high in the draft last year, number 1 overall, for someone that really didn't have the production. Well, Tyree Wilson, albeit against lesser competition in the Big 12, has produced pretty well and is just fitting the mold of a modern-day, big-bodied pass rusher. Big-time upside with Tyree Wilson. I thought about going DB for the Cardinals, but sometimes the best way to take pressure off the secondary is to get help up front. They really haven't truly replaced Chandler Jones. I think Tyree Wilson is the one to do that. For the Commanders at 14, have them going with Cam Smith, corner out of South Carolina. Bottom line is they need help at corner really, really badly. There are a lot of question marks in that secondary. They're allowing too many yards per game as well, and we've seen some of these corners get picked on. So Cam Smith would be an upgrade, one of the best corners, if not the best corner in the draft, as much as I like Keely Ringo. At 15, if the Packers don't take a receiver high in the draft at some point, I don't know what's going to happen. Quentin Johnston feels like a really great fit. Aaron Rodgers has not played up to Aaron Rodgers' standards this year, and I think a lot of that has to do with not being on the same page with these young receivers and some of these not so talented receivers at this point. They need a true bona fide stud, and Quentin Johnston might be the best receiver in the entire draft. He's got top-tier size. He's got great quickness for that size, great hands down the field. And then at 16, I have the Colts going with Broderick Jones. So I made this before the news came out that Sam Ehlinger was going to start the rest of the year for the Colts. But here's the situation. They need help on the offensive line. Left tackle especially is, I think, a position that can be upgraded. And I don't know if there's a quarterback that the Colts would consider taking at this point. I don't know what they think their future is going to be. They play in a not so talented division. They are getting better in the AFC South. But I'm not sure this is a bona fide, we have to take a quarterback at number 16. Now, the Colts could move up the draft board quite a bit, right? And things could change. But for right now, I have them going with an offensive lineman. It's a young, talented player, Broderick Jones from Georgia. Another guy who really didn't have a ton of experience starting, but played well last year when he was on the field, and then has been very, very good for Georgia this year. And I think he's going to end up being a first-round pick if he declares. At number 17, I have the Patriots going with Felix Anyudike-Uzama, edge rusher out of Kansas State. Here's the deal with him. Really talented player, big, high-motor pass rusher, was undersized, bulked up, still looks pretty good. I'm a big Felix Anyudike-Uzama guy, and the Patriots need edge help pretty badly. I think they've tried to bring some guys in. They really just haven't seen it. I think they're going to end up investing in an edge rusher in some way, shape, or form in this offseason. First round would be a pretty good spot to do it. I thought Trenton Simpson would have been a good fit for them too. He ends up going the next pick to the Bengals. The Bengals are good. It's tough to find a position for them on offense to upgrade outside of the offensive line. And we just saw a run on offensive linemen. I feel like the Bengals just missed out on all of the tackles worth selecting at this point in the draft. So have them going a different direction and just upgrading the defense. They need to stop allowing so many points. And a versatile linebacker like Trenton Simpson that can move all over, I think is a good way to do that. At 19, have the Bucs going with Hendon Hooker. Yes, Hendon Hooker sneaking into the first round here. And here's why. I think it makes a lot of sense. And he's one of the true teams that I could actually see being a fit. The Bucs have a win now roster that is just kind of not performing. And I think some regression from Tom Brady, we're finally seeing it here in 2022, which seems wild, but we're seeing Tom Brady not be the Tom Brady that we've seen before, not will his team to victory. The Bucs have a really talented group, and Hendon Hooker, I think, can keep you in a situation where you're competing for the Super Bowl. He's been tremendous for Tennessee in the Josh Heupel offense. He's been so great. And I think if you're looking at any quarterback that can come in, down the board and be a contributor and be a really good option right away, I think Hendon Hooker is probably as close as you're going to get outside the top 10. And then at number 20, I have the Lions going receiver Kayshon Boutte out of LSU. He's really talented. Didn't have him in the first round of my last mock draft just because the production really wasn't there. Wanted to get some new guys in. But from a talent perspective, he's one of the best receivers in this draft, I think, very easily. And it's easy to say even though he's fought through injuries this year, right? It's easy to say, oh man, Jackson and Jigba was so much more productive. How would you have a player like Kayshon Boutte going over him? Well, the draft isn't based on production. We've seen that time and time again. It's based on traits and upside, and Boutte just has more of it than a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba. So I am going higher. The Lions could use a receiver one. I like what Jamison Williams offers you as a deep threat. Kayshon Boutte can also really run, but also has a ton of run after catch potential. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's a really good slot receiver. And then you have a solidified 3 to team up with your new quarterback. And that offense starts to get pretty exciting. The Chargers are another tough team because they have a talented roster. They just don't seem to be able to put it all together. I like the Chargers, but they also haven't made the playoffs since 2018. I'm not sure that's going to change this year. And for me, I think help up front is a good way to solve some of your problems. And Gervon Dexter is a really talented player for the Gators defense. Big-bodied guy with pass rush upside, but is just a space eater as well. I think he's like 6'5", 6'6", 315. Big dude, would give you a much-needed presence on the interior of that defensive line next to Sebastian Joseph Day. At corner, for the Ravens, I like Christian Gonzalez being a good fit. Corner is a huge need for them. They're getting torched through the air. Some injuries in the secondary certainly don't help. And I could also see a pass rusher being a big need for them as well, given the age that they have. But I like Odafe Owe. I like David Ajabo going forward. So I like Christian Gonzalez to upgrade that secondary, get some youth in there next to Marlon Humphrey, or on the other side of, I should say. Gonzalez is good, big-bodied, one of these long corners, long arms, so important at the position. And I could just see them upgrading in a big way. 23, one of the most interesting picks of the draft for me. It's Cameron Ward out of Washington State, staying in state, going to Seattle. And the Seahawks are a weird team because Geno's playing well. Do they really need to take a quarterback? I don't know. At what point do we say, hey, Geno Smith is playing well, he can help us win games, we don't need to invest in a quarterback? But also, he's not the youngest guy in the world, could be due for some regression. Cameron Ward has big upside, big arm, mobile guy, has been really fun to watch for Washington State. He was a transfer from Incarnate Word a year ago, and is just a really exciting high upside player. I don't have Anthony Richardson in this first round, but I do have Cameron Ward, who's one of those same type of, high upside QBs because of the mobility and the arm strength. And it's an interesting fit for Seattle that I guess wouldn't have to play him right away with Geno Smith. And then at 24, I have the Titans going Jordan Addison. You need help at receiver. Plain and simple. Don't think I should have to really sell you on Jordan Addison, who's maybe the best route runner in the class, who just gives you a bona fide target, which the Titans need desperately. Moving on, I have the Jets going Noah Sewell, inside linebacker out of Oregon. Their defense has played really well. Their front seven is good. Linebacker to me is kind of the weak point on this team. Noah Sewell hopefully fixes that for the Jets. We're just playing really good football right now. At 26, have the Cowboys going Jackson Smith and Jigba. I know it's going to seem late down the board, but he is just not the most explosive guy. He could end up just being a slot receiver. I really like Jackson Smith and Jigba. He outproduced Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, and there is a certain value to that. He's really, really good in his own right. I think he's going to be a first-round pick as a result, but he just happens to fall down the board in this mock draft. Other receivers going ahead of him dealt with some injury stuff in 2022, and we've seen what the Cowboys offense is capable of with more than two capable receivers, and when they had Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, that was a pretty good group. Now, when they just have CeeDee Lamb, how really good is he? Michael Gallup coming back from injury. I think they could end up taking a luxury pick on what is already a good roster and going with a falling star here in Jackson Smith and Jigba. At 27, had the Vikings going Joey Porter Jr. He could go a lot earlier than this as well. He's got the size, he's got the athleticism, and the Vikings need to upgrade at corner, need somebody younger, need somebody that can really run. Joey Porter Jr. checking off some of those boxes. And then at 28, I have Eli Ricks back in the first round. He was great for LSU, of course, transferred to Alabama, has kind of been earning his way onto the field, played really great for Bama this past week, and I think he could end up being a first-round pick as a result. If he continues this down the stretch, he's got the size, not the most explosive corner, but good press man, could be a first-rounder. And it feels funny to keep doing this, but man, these guys all feel like they could go earlier, and it's just, that's one of those things you get with the mock drafts where who knows what's going to happen. It's so early in the season. It's October. April's a long way away. But I have the Giants at 29, and not because I chose the Giants at 29, not because I think the Giants are going to make it to the NFC Championship and then this lose to the Eagles. No 32 picks, by the way. The Dolphins forfeited a pick if you were unaware. But this is just the draft order as it stands right now. The Giants could use secondary help. Brian Branch, I don't know. It's kind of a tough one. He is a hybrid defender that can play all over the secondary. I really like him. I'm not sure he's a boundary corner, and that's kind of one of the Giants' biggest needs. But I also don't see a boundary corner that I think is worthy of this pick at this point in the year. We'll talk about Clark Phillips briefly. He's a talented player. No disrespect to Clark Phillips, but it will be very tough for a corner that's about 5'10", 5'9", or 5'10", get into the first round. It just is. Because in the NFL, someone that's 5'9 or 5'10 is a slot corner. The Giants have a lot of slot corners, right? And Brian Branch maybe isn't a great fit because of him not really being a boundary corner. Just a great, versatile defensive back. I really like the player. I think maybe he could blossom into being a boundary, but that's not really what he's done so far. But with Clark Phillips, man, he's talented, but it's tough to be undersized and still go high in the draft, especially at corner. We've seen Noah Igbenogany go round one. Didn't really work out for Miami. He was undersized. He was always projected to be a slot corner. He's probably not someone that's going to be an outside boundary corner in the NFL. So that's why I don't have Clark Phillips in the first round. That's probably why I'll continue to not have Clark Phillips in the first round. He's really good, but there are limitations. And while those are not exactly magnified in college football, they can be in the NFL, and size is extremely important in this league, and it's why I'm probably going to keep him down the board. It's why somebody like Jackson Smith-Njigba goes a little bit lower than you probably see elsewhere. It's because size and athletic profile are so important to most of these teams drafting, it's just naturally very easy for them to slide down the board. At 30, same type of thought here. I love Bijan Robinson. He's one of the best college football running backs I've ever seen. He is incredible. He's also a running back. It's a fairly replaceable position. I think Bijan could go a lot higher than this, though. I really do. I don't know what team's going to take a chance on him, but he is, from a talent perspective, top 10 in the draft, I think, very easily. I wouldn't question that even for a second, but he is a running back. The league does not value running back. That's what it is. So he falls to the Bills, and it'd be an immediate upgrade. I don't need to sell you on, a potential Heisman candidate here in Bijan Robinson. At 31, have the Eagles going Jahmyr Gibbs from Bama. It's just a great fit. I love Jahmyr Gibbs as a player. Another guy that I could see going higher than this because of the versatility that he brings to an offense. Explosive. Burst. Jahmyr Gibbs can catch out of the backfield. Decent route runner. Really, really talented player. Georgia Tech transfer, has played well for Alabama. Really well. And for the Eagles, they have Miles Sanders, they have Kenneth Gainwell. Why even have two different players when Jahmyr Gibbs can fill both of their roles and do so probably at a higher level? I think he's really, really talented. And that is my first mock draft Monday officially on the 24th here of October. Thank you for watching. I was a little all over the place. Hopefully I wasn't too poorly spoken in this video, but I will see you in the next one. Take it easy. Thanks for watching.